The 30th Dayton Peace Agreement just passed. It's behind us, and someone who knows a lot about those negotiations and the situation after that is Carl Bildt, former High Representative to Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also someone who took a part in those negotiations, and he joins me now from Stockholm. Mr. Bildt, welcome back to Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also to Program N1.
Thanks very much.
Mr. Bildt, the 30th anniversary, we heard just a couple of days ago some of your thoughts with Chris Hill at CNN with Christiana Schmidta, but how do you see the situation in Bosnia today?
I see it as complicated but fairly stable. I mean, if you look at the international media, you sometimes have a scare story about war breaking out in Bosnia, and I've always said to people, that's not going to happen. It's a stable society. Its politics is somewhat complicated, and I'm not impressed by all of the politicians that I met in Bosnia in terms of their willingness to bring the country forward. But that's very different from the country that was there 30 years ago, which was, of course, destroyed, divided, and very fearful about the future. From that point of view, Bosnia has made great progress, although less progress than I had hoped for.
Mr. Bildt, recently you had your fair share of exchanging views or criticism coming towards you by Milorada Dodika and Republika Srpska. How do you see the situation regarding Dodik and his moves, which destabilized Bosnia and Herzegovina in some part?
Well, I think he is gradually fading away. His best days, if you might phrase it like that, is clearly behind him. And it will be important to see how sort of Republika Srpska brings forward a new generation of political leaders that doesn't play the games that Dodik has been playing. He's been playing with all of the secessionist rhetoric. I don't think it's been particularly serious. I don't think there's been any real risk of that. But the rhetoric has been destabilizing in a way that has not been constructive. And I hope that will pave the way for sort of a better dialogue also between Sarajevo and Banja Luka on the real problems that the country is facing.
Mr. Bildt, when we look at the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina at the moment, we are stuck on the road towards European Union, and Dodik is partially responsible for that, but also the other political parties here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But you were also critical towards a High Representative and the Office of High Representative in the recent months. How do you see that situation?
Well, I wasn't critical of the High Representative personally. I think he's doing as good as he can in a difficult situation. So, and he's a good friend. But I was, as I said, 30 years ago, did anyone anticipate that we would have a High Representative, Office of the High Representative with executive power 30 years later? I mean, no one thought in those terms. And I was in favor of the gradual sort of fading away of the OHR much earlier. And I think that would probably have been good. It would have sort of empowered the politicians of Bosnia with somewhat more responsibility, not only blaming the OHR or demanding the OHR to do things, but actually doing things themselves. But we are where we are. And let's see how this can be managed. I think this is, Mr. Schmidta, he said it himself, is in all probability, with all certainty, the last of the High Representatives, but still plays a role that's important, of course.
Can Bosnia and Herzegovina move forward towards European Union with a situation like this, and especially knowing that regional players plus external players are playing a role here? And I'm thinking about Serbia and Croatia, but also Russia, China, and Turkey, and we have a lack of interest coming from the United States at the moment.
Yeah, of course it can. If there is the determination and the will and the ability of the political leaders of Bosnia, of course it can. External players, a certain role, but that should not be exaggerated. Bosnia is, sorry to say, it's yesterday's news. And all of these external players that you mentioned are extremely busy with other issues. And Bosnia comes, sorry to say, very, very long down the list of things they're doing. So I don't think we will see any serious either sort of disruptions or help, to be quite frank, from the international actors. They're busy with their own things. So it's up to Bosnia itself to do what's necessary, the politicians of Bosnia, all of them, to do what is necessary and move the country forward. And if they do that, perfectly possible, in my opinion.
But two of those players are very interested in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and one of them is Viktor Orban, who just recently welcomed Dodik and Mr. Karan and Mrs. Cvijanovic to Budapest, and Foreign Affairs Minister Cvijanovic was intending to come to Bosnia to visit Banja Luka. How do you see that role, because Orban is inside the EU and can be a voice around the European Council table?
True. Viktor Orban is keen to play a role in the Balkans. To some extent understandable. It is the neighborhood of Hungary. But exactly what he's up to remains to be seen. I think his possibility to influence policy is somewhat limited. I don't think that he's been playing any significant role in the deliberations in Brussels on Bosnia policy, but I don't know, it could have been some details that he's engaged in. But clearly he has his friends in Bosnia, and he wants to support them at the same time as we've seen him in other Balkan countries, where he's also playing around without any major significance in terms of impact, I have to say.
Mr. Bildt, how do you see the role of United States at the moment here in Bosnia and Herzegovina? Because Bosnia, as many other countries in the region, doesn't have a new U.S. ambassador, and we recently have seen a move to remove Dodik and SNSD members from sanctions list, and we know that the United States are interested in, or Trump family is interested in investing in Serbia. How that can play in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because we know that the United States were a key factor in Bosnia for many decades in the past.
But that was in the past. We now have a United States that is retreating from the world and retreating from Europe. I mean, they are retreating from an active engagement in Bosnia, and they are retreating from an active engagement in Europe. You can see they are fairly uncommitted to even the security of Ukraine, which is the issue for European security. We see them being sort of fairly non-committed. I mean, playing in between, whether they're with Putin the one day or with Zelensky the other day, but no consistency and no strength in US policy. So the US will still be important, needless to say, but it's not going to be the same. They are retreating from Europe and retreating from a more active role.
Let me ask you about those issues, foreign affairs issues of United States. This administration is unusual administration, and in your past as official of your country, you had a role and you have a chance to cooperate with United States. How different this administration is, and is Europe now in the situation where it needs to react more and be the geopolitical player to fill that gap which United States are leaving in Europe?
Yes, that is the case. Relationship with Washington is a complicated issue these days because, I mean, the normal foreign and security policy machinery of the United States is sort of disconnected from what is really happening. I mean, what is happening is sort of a couple of people running around the White House, be that Mr. Wittkopf or be that anyone else, or Mr. Kushner, doing, as you said, investments in Belgrade for purely commercial reasons. It's not politics, it's money. That is their interest. Europe will have to stand up and be a stronger actor. That is enlargement policy, that is trade policy, that is security policy. And I think we are seeing that. I mean, in my opinion, it could be better and could be faster, but there's no question that development is going in that direction.
Mr. Bildt, the eastern flank of Europe is under the threat of Russia.
Yeah.
Many of your compatriots and other people from Baltic and Scandinavian countries, but also from Eastern Europe, are warning about that how viable that option is, that Russia will try to attack one of your countries if it doesn't go well for them in Ukraine. But also, can Europe replace United States and help Ukraine to win this war against Russia?
Yeah, we are doing that. I think so far Russian policy has been a rather miserable failure. After 3.5 years of war, with all of the military resources that Russia has at its disposal, they managed to control somewhat more than 19% of the territory of Ukraine. That's not particularly impressive. And the possibility for the Russian armies to conquer the rest of Ukraine, I think, are virtually non-existent. We must support Ukraine. The Americans are no longer with us in that respect. That is highly regrettable, but that's a fact. So Ukraine is very much dependent upon primarily the financial, to a certain extent the military, but primarily the financial support of the European Union. It's a lot of money, but it's no more than roughly 0.3% of GDP. So it is perfectly affordable. And that is, of course, I mean, the defense of Ukraine today is the defense of Europe tomorrow. And that's why that is so important. The stability of the entire, either we bring stability to the east of Europe, or Russia will bring instability gradually to also further west in Europe, which would be clearly detrimental to our security.
Politico has released a piece just today in which there is discussion about response of Europe towards Russia. Some are advocating that Europe should try to do the same as Russia is doing at the moment with the drones and hybrid warfare, or just to warn them that there is potential response. Do you think that that's good idea, or the better idea is the one which coming from President of European Commission Ursula von der Leyen, where she says that we need a wall of drones on the eastern flank of Europe to counter that threat which is coming from Russia towards European cities in the past few months?
I think the priority is the financial support to Ukraine. That is absolutely critical. But because what we have seen during the last few years, that the Ukrainians are extremely capable themselves of building up a defense industry and a drone industry and a drone defense industry. They are probably contributing substantially more than 50% of their war material themselves from their production. But it's to a large extent dependent upon our financial support. And that, I think, is the most important thing that we can do, both immediately for Ukraine and for blocking the options of Russia of going forward. As long as Russia can't defeat Ukraine, I don't think they can do very much else.
Mr. Bildt, let's talk about Middle East. Middle East is very interesting at the moment. Donald Trump has presented something what he calls a peace plan. It's a 20 sentences on a piece of paper without much underneath. We saw this resolution at the United Nations Security Council, which says, oh, we are going to start planning now to do something based on your experience with Dayton, but also from your diplomatic years. Is this a way to resolve this situation? Also including the fact that the Prime Minister of Israel says we are not going to allow a Palestinian state on the space between Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea.
No, from the more immediate perspective, it is of course positive that there is now some sort of ceasefire. It's not perfect, but overall there's a ceasefire in Gaza, and that of course alleviates some of the immediate humanitarian suffering. It allows for the delivery of humanitarian aid, not as it should be as of yet, but a better situation now than sort of 2 months ago. That's a positive side. Then, as you pointed out, there are quite a number of things in this particular paper that is ambitious, and let's see what can be achieved. An international stability force is going to be not entirely easy to get together, and exactly the mandate of it remains to be seen, and the composition of it remains to be seen, and the interaction with the Israelis remains to be seen. And then, as you point out, what is needed is what is sometimes called a political horizon. Where is this all heading? where not least the Arab neighboring states are insisting on the perspective, and not only them, by the way, perspectives for a Palestinian state. That's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen tomorrow, not even the day after tomorrow, but the perspective should be there. There's no other way long term to secure peace there than by having two states living peacefully side by side together. There are those in Israel against, including the prime minister. There are those on the Palestinian state, including sort of the Hamas, some of the Hamas people anyhow against. But over time, this must happen.
One more question for the end of this conversation is about Asia and China. China is playing very important role, and many are saying that the China is potential enemy or potential danger in the future, and we saw that the NATO discussed about that. Can we see destabilization of Asia with China's action towards Taiwan, but also how this trade war between states and China will impact Europe at the moment?
Well, I mean, the worrying thing is, of course, if something happens with Taiwan. I don't see that immediately, but it is an open issue. It is sort of the unresolved Chinese civil war, you might say. And at some point in the time of history, there has to be some sort of solution, whatever that is, hopefully a political one, that is acceptable to both sides of the Formosa Straits. And that needs a careful management also by the international community. Then it is a fact that China is emerging as a very major, primarily economic power. Their economic, industrial, technological development is very impressive indeed. And that means that we will see more of a Chinese presence in our economies of different sorts. You see that in the Balkans to some extent. I mean, not dramatic, but you see it in the Balkans as well. And that we'll have to manage. I don't see sort of a military threat from China in any sort of way in our part of the world, but we need to manage the economic relationship with China in the decades ahead.
Mr. Bildt, thank you so very much for joining me from Stockholm and for being back to Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Thanks.